Navy SEAL dies in ambush. His last words on radio changed. 47 lives. What he said in final breath saved entire village, made widow. Millionaire. His death wasn't end, it was beginning. His last words weren't "I love you" or "tell my family," but 6 numbers that changed everything for 47 people he'd never meet. Screen shows Afghan Valley at dusk. Dust settling after gunfire. Navy SEAL Senior Chief Marcus Thompson lying against a mud wall with 3 bullets in his chest. Radio handset pressed to his mouth with bloody fingers. His breathing shallow and wet. Camera tight on his face showing he knows he's dying. No fear, just focus. And he's repeating 6 numbers into the radio, 47 to 918. I repeat, 47 to 918. Before the transmission cuts to static and his hand drops and the light leaves his eyes. 43 years old, 21 years of service. Died alone in a village called Xerox that most Americans couldn't find on a map. But those 6 numbers, those final words, they saved 47 lives and created a legacy that's still growing 15 years later. Senior Chief Marcus Thompson had been in Afghanistan for 8 months, his 4th deployment to the country, embedded with an Army Special Forces team training Afghan commandos. And unlike his previous deployments, this one was different. Because Marcus had changed. His wife Kelly had died of cancer 11 months earlier. Died after a 2-year battle that Marcus watched via video calls from bases around the world. And he'd held her hand exactly twice during those 2 years. Once on emergency leave when doctors said she had weeks. Once at her funeral when she was already gone. And the guilt of that. Of being deployed while cancer ate his wife alive. It had transformed Marcus from a warrior who fought for country into a man who fought for something else. Something he couldn't name but felt like penance. Like maybe if he saved enough people over here, it would balance the ledger for the one person he'd failed to save back home. The mission was routine: take 4 Afghan commandos into Xerox village, meet with the elder, gather intelligence about Taliban movements in the valley in and out in 3 hours. Done it 100 times. But routine missions kill you just as dead as complicated ones. And as Marcus and his team entered the village square at 1647 hours, the ambush erupted from 3 directions. RPGs and machine gun fire from rooftops and doorways. And the first burst cut down 2 Afghan commandos before Marcus could react. The third took shrapnel to the leg, and Marcus grabbed him and dragged him behind a low wall, returning fire with his M4 while calling for exfil. But the radio operator was hit. Radio destroyed, and Marcus realized with perfect clarity that help wasn't coming. They were pinned in a village with no air support, no backup, no extraction, and the Taliban fighters were closing in, maybe 20 of them, and Marcus had 1 Afghan commando wounded beside him, and 200 rounds of ammunition, and the knowledge that he was probably going to die here in this dusty village that smelled like burning trash and cordite. Screen shows the ambush in real time, chaos and violence. Marcus moving with the efficiency of 21 years training, grabbing the wounded Afghan, returning fire, his face showing calculation not panic, and he's checking his ammunition, checking exits, checking the wounded man's bleeding, doing the mathematics of survival and coming up with an answer he doesn't like, but accepts it. The way a man who's already lost everything accepts that loss might be all he has left to give. But here's what you need to understand about Senior Chief Marcus Thompson. When Kelly died, she'd left him a letter. Told him to open it on their anniversary, which had passed 3 weeks before this mission. And in that letter, she'd written something that Marcus carried in his vest pocket. Read every night before sleep. Marcus, you've spent 20 years saving strangers. And I'm not angry about that. I'm proud. But I need you to promise me something when I'm gone. When you're back out there doing what you do. Remember that saving 1 life completely is worth more than saving 100 lives partially. Quality over quantity, depth over breadth. And if you die, Marcus, die making sure someone else truly lives. Die for something specific. Something human. Something you can name. Don't just be another warrior who died for abstract concepts like freedom and democracy. Die for actual humans with actual names. Make it personal. Make it matter. Make it me. Marcus had read that letter 50 times. Memorized every word. And as he sat behind that wall in Xerox with bullets hitting concrete inches from his head, he thought about Kelly's words: die for something specific, something you can name, and he looked around this village. Really looked. And he saw them. 47 civilians, men and women and children, hiding in doorways and behind walls, trapped in the crossfire between Marcus's position and the Taliban fighters. And Marcus realized that the Taliban didn't care about collateral damage. would kill every civilian in this square to get to him. And if he called in air support, the bombs wouldn't discriminate either. Would kill Taliban and civilians alike. Flatten the village to save one American. And that's when Marcus made his decision. Made it with the clarity that comes when you've got nothing left to lose, because you've already lost everything that mattered. Screen shows Marcus's point of view, scanning the village square. Camera focusing on the faces hiding an old man clutching to grandchildren, a woman covering her infant with her body, a teenage boy frozen in a doorway. And we see 47 faces, individual and terrified. And Marcus's breathing steadies. His expression shifts from survival to purpose. And he pulls out Kelly's letter from his vest pocket, reads it one last time, folds it carefully, puts it back, and picks up the radio handset that still works even though the operator is dead. Marcus keyed the radio and called for air support, gave coordinates. But then, he did something no one expected. He gave different coordinates. 6 numbers that placed the strike not on his position, but on the Taliban positions surrounding him, which meant calling fire on himself, which meant dying, but also meant the 47 civilians would be clear, would survive, would get to grow old, watch their children grow, live the lives Kelly never got to finish. And as Marcus transmitted those coordinates 47 to 918, he was thinking about Kelly's letter, about dying for something specific, and he could name these people now, could see their faces, could count them. 47 humans who would live because he chose to die. And that felt right, felt like penance, felt like the first mission in 8 months that mattered in a way he could measure. The F-16S arrived 6 minutes later, dropped to 5-pound JDAMs on the coordinates Marcus provided, and the explosions were massive. Killed 17 Taliban fighters and Senior Chief Marcus Thompson and wounded the Afghan commander beside him, but he survived. And when the dust cleared and the Army QRF arrived 20 minutes later, they found Marcus against the wall. 3 bullets in his chest and shrapnel wounds from the airstrike he'd called on himself. And in his hand was still the radio handset, and his last transmission was recorded. Those 6 numbers, and then his voice saying clear the village. 47 civilians in the square. Get them out. Tell my daughter I kept the promise, and then static. And Marcus was gone, 43 years old. Died saving people he'd never met. People who didn't speak his language. People who would never know his name. But here's where the story changes. Where Marcus's last words, his last act, his last breath, created something nobody expected. The army investigated the incident, reviewed the radio transmission, did battle damage assessment, and confirmed that Marcus had deliberately called the airstrike on his own position, had committed what looked like suicide by air support, except the intent wasn't death but salvation, wasn't ending his life but preserving 47 others, and this distinction mattered enough that the army recommended him for the Medal of Honor, and 2 years after his death President awarded it posthumously, and Marcus's daughter Sarah, who was 17 when her father died, she accepted it, and in her speech she read from her mother's letter, the one Marcus had carried, the one about dying for something you can name, and she said, my father died for 47 people he could name, 47 faces he saw, 47 lives he chose over his own, and MOM told him to do exactly that. Told him to make it personal, make it human, make it specific, and he did. And I'm more proud of him than words can express. Screen shows. White House ceremony. Sarah in a black dress accepting the Medal of Honor, reading from her mother's letter with tears running down her face. The audience of military brass and politicians and 47 Afghan refugees. Yes, refugees. Because after the Taliban learned that Marcus had died saving their village, they marked every survivor for death. And the US evacuated all 47 to America, resettled them in Virginia Beach near where Marcus had lived, gave them asylum, gave them new lives. And they're all there in the White House, watching this 17-year-old girl read her dead mother's words about her dead father's sacrifice. And the camera captures their faces. These 47 humans who exist because one man chose to die. Their expressions showing grief and gratitude mixed together into something that has no name but feels sacred. But the story doesn't end there. Couldn't end there because Marcus's last words had created something bigger than anyone anticipated. The 47 refugees, these survivors, they created a community fund in Marcus's name, every family contributing what they could, and within 5 years that fund had grown to $2.3 million from donations across America from people who heard the story, heard about the SEAL who died for specific humans, and that money went to Sarah Thompson for college, for housing, for starting her life. and Sarah used it to go to medical school. Became a trauma surgeon. Said, "Dad saved 47 lives in one day. I'm going to save 47 lives every year until I die. That's my promise to him." And she kept it. Over 20 years, she saved over 940 lives. Multiple 47s, each one named, each one counted, each one specific, quality over quantity, depth over breadth, just like her mother wrote, just like her father died proving. And the 47 survivors, they stayed connected, created extended family in Virginia Beach. Their children are American now, speaking English, going to college, and every year on March 18th, the day Marcus died, all 47 families gather at his grave in Arlington National Cemetery, and they bring photos, bring stories, bring their children and grandchildren, and they take turns reading names. I am Hamid. Marcus saved me. I am Fatima. Marcus saved me. I am armed. Marcus saved me. 47 names. 47 lives. 47 testaments to one man's last words, last breath, last choice. Screen shows. Arlington Cemetery, Section 60. Marcus's grave, surrounded by 47 people. Multiple generations now. Children who weren't born when Marcus died. And they're placing flowers. Taking turns reading their names. And Sarah Thompson is there, now 40 years old. And she's introducing her daughter Emma to the families, saying, "This is Emma. She's named after my grandmother. And she exists because these people exist because my father chose them." And the camera slowly pulls back, showing this community created by sacrifice. This family born from death. This legacy that started with 6 numbers and grew into something beautiful and lasting. 15 years after Marcus died, researchers at the Naval War College did a study on his final transmission, analyzed the coordinates he gave, calculated the precision required to call an airstrike that would kill the enemy without harming the civilians, and they determined that Marcus had to calculate those numbers in his head. Under fire, bleeding, dying, had to do battlefield geometry with bullets hitting around him, had to be accurate to within 10 meters or the civilians died too. And the math worked perfectly. The coordinates were exact, which meant in his final moments Marcus wasn't just sacrificing himself. He was executing a perfect military operation, one man calling fire on himself with such precision that everyone he wanted to save survived, and everyone he wanted to kill died. And that level of capability, that level of control in the face of death, that's what separates warriors from heroes. Competence plus sacrifice, ability plus choice. And Marcus had both in his last breath. Today, 47 families in Virginia Beach tell their children about Senior Chief Marcus Thompson, about his last words that saved them. And those children are growing up American, doctors and teachers and engineers, living the lives Marcus's death purchased. And Sarah Thompson runs a trauma center that treats 300 patients monthly, and she's trained 47 doctors in combat trauma medicine. Specific number, intentional, always 47. Always honoring her father's last act, and Kelly Thompson's letter. The one Marcus carried, it's in the SEAL Museum now, under glass, next to his Medal of Honor. And visitors read it and understand that sometimes the most powerful thing a warrior can do isn't killing enemies, but choosing which lives to save. Being specific about it, being intentional, being human enough to see 47 faces in a dusty village and decide they matter more than you do. If you're wondering whether your life matters, whether your choices count, whether one person can change anything, remember Marcus Thompson, who changed 47 lives with 6 numbers, who died for people he could name, who proved that Kelly was right. Saving one life completely is worth more than saving 100 partially. And 47 lives completely saved created 940 more through Sarah's medical career, created thousands more through the children and grandchildren who wouldn't exist if Marcus hadn't called those coordinates. And that's legacy, that's impact, that's what it means to die for something specific rather than something abstract. And the beauty of it, the terrible beauty of it, is that Marcus didn't know about the refugees or the fund or Sarah's medical career or the 47 families gathered at his grave every year. He just knew 47 humans were going to die if he didn't. And he decided they mattered more than he did, made the decision in seconds, executed it perfectly, and died knowing he'd kept Kelly's promise to make it personal, make it human, make it matter. And 15 years later, those 6 numbers, those last words, they're still saving lives, still creating futures, still proving that one warrior choosing death so others can live isn't tragedy. It's triumph. It's purpose. It's what separates a good death from a meaningless one. And Marcus Thompson's death meant everything to 47 people who can name themselves, because he named him first, counted them, chose them, died for them specifically. And that's the lesson. That's what his last words teaches. Your life matters to the specific people you choose to impact. Your choices echo forward through the lives you touch intentionally. And when your last breath comes, when your last words are spoken, make them count for someone you can name, someone specific, someone human. Because that's what transforms death into legacy, loss into gift, goodbye into forever.